Just when we thought the palace meeting brought an end to the wahala, a new nightmare has begun. 3 mysterious men arrived at the villa, and under the guidance of Olori Shadow, they began to pull out hidden cameras from places you would never imagine. From the driveway to the private garden of Queen Naomi, the invasion was everywhere. A quick prayer for you. May every hidden eye monitoring your life for evil be blinded today. May the peace of God expose every trap set for you in secret. Amen. Welcome to Crown Gist. If you love the realest updates, hit that subscribe button now and join our family for more gists. For my Crown Gist friends and families, please note, we respect the Yoruba culture deeply, so we use special fictional names for certain people and sacred rituals. Stay with us and you will understand them perfectly. The land of the Golden Crown was supposed to be at rest. The great meeting had just finished. The tears of Olori Shadow were still fresh on the palace floor, and the prayers of the prophetess were still ringing in the air. Everyone thought that the wahala of the past years was finally buried. But you see, my Crown Gist friends and families, truth is like smoke. You cannot hold this in a room forever. It must find a way out through the roof. Just a few days after that peaceful gathering, the atmosphere in the palace changed from relief to heavy suspicion. 3 men dressed in plain clothes and carrying heavy bags of equipment arrived at the main gate. They didn't come with the noise of sirens or the drama of palace guards shouting. They arrived like shadows in the afternoon. People were wondering, who are these strangers? Rumors started flying immediately. Some thought the Golden King had finally called in special investigators from the city to look into the palace finances. Others thought that maybe the fallen elders were trying to send a message. But the most shocking part was who these men were there to see. They didn't go to the Golden King's office. They didn't go to the elders' chambers. They went straight to the quarters of Olori Shadow. Now you have to understand the tension here. This is the same Olori Shadow who just begged Queen Naomi for forgiveness. This is the woman who vowed to turn a new leaf. So when people saw her leading 3 strange men through the palace corridors, hearts began to race. Is she up to something again? Has she gone back to her old ways? The palace staff were peeping through windows, whispering to themselves, "I beg, make no war, startle." Olori Shadow did not look left or right. Her face was set like a woman on a mission from God. She led the technicians straight toward the villa of Queen Naomi. This villa is relatively new. It was built to be a sanctuary, a place of peace for the jewel of the kingdom. But as they approached the gates, Olori Shadow stopped. She looked at the men and simply said, "Start from here." What followed was like something out of a spy movie. The technicians began to pull out scanners. They moved toward the driveway, the very place where Queen Naomi drives her car in and out every day. Within minutes, the machine began to beep. One of the men reached into a small credit near the gate light and pulled out a tiny, high-tech camera. The people watching froze. A camera in the driveway? Olori Shadow didn't even blink. She moved them further in. She pointed to the fence line where the beautiful flowers grow. Another beat, another camera. She led them to the sitting area where Queen Naomi hosts her guests. Another one. She even took them to the mini garden, a sacred place where the queen goes to meditate and find peace. Tucked away in the branches of a tree was another lens staring directly at the spot where the queen sits. By the time they were halfway through, the pile of equipment on the floor was growing. My Crown Gist friends and families, the violation was total. Everywhere Queen Naomi turned, someone was watching. Her entrance, her exits, her private conversations, her moments of prayer. It was all being recorded. The shock in the palace was so thick you could touch it. Some of the maids began to cry. Some of the guards were shaking their heads in shame. How could this happen in the house of the Golden King? Olori Shadow stood in the middle of the garden, looking at the hidden eyes they had just uprooted. She looked at the crowd that had gathered and made it very clear. I did not put these here, but I have known about them. And today, the silence ends. The realization hit everyone like a physical blow. The peace they celebrated was being mocked by these hidden cameras. The villa was not a sanctuary. It was a cage with glass walls. And the most terrifying part was yet to come, because Olori Shadow was about to name the people who paid for this wickedness. African Nigerian friends and families, the ground is shaking in the land of the Golden Crown. Let's follow Olori Shadow as she reveals the faces behind these hidden eyes. The pile of cameras on the floor was growing, and with every new device they pulled out of the walls, the hearts of everyone watching grew heavier. It was no longer a secret, it was a crime. The technicians were moving with speed now, their machines beeping like a heartbeat that was about to stop. They moved toward the back approach of the villa, a place where Queen Naomi thought she could walk in total privacy. Beep, another one. They moved toward the driveway again, checking the underhang of the roof. Beep, another length. People were asking, how did Olorishadow know exactly where to point? You see, that is the question that kept the palace staff whispering. She didn't have to search, she knew. She led them like she was reading a map that had been engraved in her mind for a long time. This was a woman who had been part of the inner circle of the palace walls, and now she was using that knowledge to dismantle the very kingdom of darkness she once occupied. Olorishadow cleared her throat, and the silence that followed was terrifying. She looked at the cameras and said these things were not planted by spirits, they were planted by men with deep pockets and shallow hearts. She began to explain that she had been aware of this surveillance for a while. She revealed that the cameras were not just for gossip, they were for control. The masterminds behind this were none other than the fallen elders, those high-ranking the Golden Crown elders who had been stripped of their power and sent out of the palace. These were men like Ogunchaye, men who used to sit close to the Golden King but had poison in their pockets. They were the ones who had the money to hire experts. They were the ones who wanted to know when Queen Naomi arrived, when she left, who visited her and what she talked about. They wanted to hold her life in their hands so they could manipulate the Golden King. They wanted to know her secrets so they could create their own truths, Olorishadow said, her voice trembling with a mix of anger and regret. She admitted that back when the wahala was at its peak, she was working in alignment with these people. But as she saw the grace of Queen Naomi and as the spirit of the land of the Golden Crown began to reject the evil, her conscience began to scream. She told the crowd that she had already whispered some of this to the Golden King in private, but now, after the prayers of the prophetess, she realized that whispering was not enough. The cameras had to be physically uprooted for the peace to be real. The violation was massive. We are talking about the private outdoor space of the Queen. My crown chief's friends and families imagine the audacity. Someone was sitting in a dark room somewhere, watching the Queen walk in her garden, watching her pray, watching her children play. It was a total invasion. Olorishadow revealed that the surveillance was even wider than they thought. It wasn't just Queen Naomi's villa. There were cameras placed in other strategic parts of the palace without the king's permission or approval. It was a palace-wide spy network. As the technicians continued to work, the fallen elders' names were being dropped like hot coals. Names of people who used to be respected, people who used to represent the tradition and honor of the land. Now they were exposed as common spies. Olorishadow vowed that she was leaving no stone unturned. She said, if you think you can use money to monitor or intimidate this woman in secret, you have failed, because from today, her eyes are my eyes, and my strength is her strength. The atmosphere in the villa changed from shock to a fierce kind of protection. Those who once doubted if Olorishadow had truly changed were now seeing the evidence. You don't betray your former partners in crime like this unless you have truly turned a new leaf. She was burning her bridges with the fallen elders just to build a wall of protection around Queen Naomi. But the question remained, now that the cameras are out, what happens to the footage? Where are these images being sent to? And most importantly, how will the Golden King react when he sees the full list of those who authorized this evil?
The technicians were now sweating, moving from the fence to the driveway, and even checking the pillars of the main entrance. Every time a camera was pulled out, it felt like a heavy chain was being broken off the neck of the land of the Golden Crown. The total count was staggering. This was not just one or two gadgets. This was a full-blown surveillance operation. Olorishadow stood in the center of her villa, her eyes flashing with a fire that no one had seen before. She wasn't just exposing cameras, she was exposing a system of wickedness. She explained to the crowd that these fallen elders had turned the palace into a theater where they were the directors. They would watch Queen Naomi in the morning, see who she spoke with, and by evening, a new rumor would land on social media with perfect accuracy. Now everyone finally understood why the secrets of the palace were always leaking like a broken pipe. "They did not do it for the king," she said, her voice echoing through the garden. "They did it to keep the king in their pockets. They wanted him to believe that he couldn't trust his own jewel." My crown-gist friends and families, can you imagine the heartbreak? While Queen Naomi was going through her own private pain, praying for the peace of the home, some men were sitting in air-conditioned rooms laughing while they watched her every move. They watched her entrance, they watched her exit, they even watched when she was at her lowest, crying in her private outdoor space. As the technicians finished their walk around the villa, Olori Shadow dropped another heavy update. She revealed that these hidden cameras were not just for the queen. These fallen elders had even planted devices in areas where the Golden King himself would have private meetings. It was a total betrayal of the crown. They wanted to have leverage over the lion of the tribe. The people who once looked up to these elders as the Golden Crown elders, the custodians of culture, were now spitting on the ground in disgust. How can a father figure become a spy in his own child's house? The betrayal cut deep into the soul of the kingdom. But Olori Shadow was not finished. She turned to the palace guards and told them to be extra vigilant. She said that the fallen elders might have been thrown out like rotten potatoes, but their agents might still be lurking in the shadows. She warned that the land of the Golden Crown would no longer be a place where money can buy information. The most emotional moment came when Queen Naomi herself stood at the balcony, looking down at the pile of canvas. She didn't say a word, but the look in her eyes was enough to make a stone cry. It was a look of someone who had finally realized that the ghosts she had been fighting were actually men she once respected. The silence between her and Olori Shadow at that moment spoke volumes. There was no need for long grammar. The action of removing those eyes was the loudest apology Olori Shadow could ever give. The technicians packed their bags, but the palace was far from quiet. The Golden King had been informed of every single discovery. They say when he saw the pile of cameras, he didn't shout, he just became very, very quiet. And you know that when a lion is quiet, something big is about to happen. The trust was not just cracked, it was shattered into a million pieces. But as the sun began to set, a new question started to fly around the palace. Now that the physical cameras are gone, what about the people who are still monitoring the palace in their hearts? And what is the Golden King planning for those fallen elders who thought they could play God in his house?
The sun was finally disappearing behind the hills of the land of the Golden Crown, but the heat inside the palace was just starting to burn. The technicians had finished their work, leaving a pile of high-tech lenses and wires on the floor, the hidden eyes that had been spying on Queen Naomi for months. As the news reached the ears of every person in the kingdom, the shock was total. People were asking, how can human beings be so wicked? When the Golden King finally walked out to see the evidence himself, the atmosphere became so heavy that even the birds stopped singing. He looked at the cameras, then he looked at the villa of his jewel. The realization that his own inner circle, the people he called the Golden Crown elders, had authorized such a violation was a blow to his heart. This was not about tradition, it was not about protecting the palace. This was a big-time invasion. It was a move by desperate men who wanted to control the throne by monitoring the woman the king loves the most. Olori Shadow stood firm by the king's side. She didn't hide anymore. She told him everything. She explained how the fallen elders like Ogunjaye and the rest had used their influence to plant these things. She revealed that their plan was to catch Queen Naomi in a moment of weakness so they could disgrace her and force the king to turn against her. But their plan failed because the queen's hands were clean. They watched and watched, but all they saw was a woman of prayer, a woman of grace, and a woman of peace. The Golden King made a move that shocked everyone. He didn't just order the cameras to be destroyed, he ordered a total spiritual and physical cleansing of the villa. He made it clear that the names of these fallen elders had been wiped from the palace books forever. They have been thrown out like a bag of rotten potatoes, and they are never to be socially involved with the land of the Golden Crown again. No events, no meeting, no honor.
They are now outsiders in the land they once tried to rule with fear. For Queen Naomi, this day brought a strange kind of relief. Now she understands why certain rumors were flying. Now she knows why it felt like the walls were talking. The wahala was not coming from the spirits, it was coming from men with cameras. But as she looked at Olori Shadow, a new bond was sealed. Olori Shadow proved that she is no longer the woman of the past. She has drawn a line in the sand. She said it clearly for all to hear. Anybody who fights with Naomi fights me. The palace foundation has been tested, but it is standing stronger than ever. The hidden enemies who thrive on jealousy and suspicion have been exposed. They thought they were safe behind their money and their titles, but the light of truth has found them out. Trust in the palace is being rebuilt, stone by stone, and the Golden King is now more protective of his jewel than ever before. If any enemy is still hiding in the shadows, thinking they can restart this war, they better think twice. The eyes in the walls are gone, and the eyes of the palace are now wide open. Before I leave you, my Kaunki's friends and families, I have to remind you of something very important. While this story is full of intensity and emotion, please remember that these are all alleged and unverified information making the rounds on social media. We are bringing you the gist as it is being discussed in the streets, but you should not see this as absolute facts yet. These are social media rumors, and we must wait for official words to confirm everything. Thank you for staying with Crown Gist. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't leave without hitting that button.